address it.
Okay. So, hello. Good morning. Morning. I think last night, in my excitement, I completely forgot to go through the first 5 verses. So maybe we will do that. So the first 5 verses are the verses of paying homage, salutations, and beginning with, of course, the great conqueror, the Buddha. I prostrate before you, Buddha, head of the Shakya clan. Your enlightened body is born out of tens of millions of positive virtues and perfect accomplishments. Your enlightened speech grants the wishes of limitless beings. Your enlightened mind sees all knowables as they are. Here, His Holiness explained that this verse is very important because it states because it states that the Buddha should not be understood as a permanent self-originating person, but rather that the Buddha has that the state of being a Buddha is a result of completing the method and the wisdom aspect of the path. So His Holiness made that very clear. So this part, your enlightened body is born out of tens of millions of positive virtues and perfect accomplishments. And then the second part, which praises the speech qualities of the Buddha. Your enlightened speech grants the wishes of limitless beings. It is said the Buddha's word is not like the ordinary speech, the Buddha's speech is not like that. His speech can, if the Buddha spoke, if the Buddha gave, let's say, a talk, then the audience, according to their mental capacity, according to their past imprints, they can understand his words in different ways. Even if he says one word, it can convey the meaning of the vast and the, what is the other word? The vast and profound. And if you go and look at the Buddha's sutras, they are usually concise and they carry much weight. Someone in Frankfurt told me that no matter how much we try to give many explanations, but if you look at the word of the Buddha, they may be just one verse, but that really contains so much information, and it's just so profound. And having this enlightened speech, it has to be backed up by an enlightened mind. Because if you don't have this enlightened mind, then I don't think your speech can have these qualities. So the enlightened mind is said to be the main factor in turning the wheel of the Dharma. And as you know, those of you who have studied Abhisamaya Alamkara, Maitreya particularly praises the enlightened mind because it plays a very important role in turning the wheel of the Dharma, through which the Buddha can then reach out to sentient beings and show them the way. So this first verse is praising or stating the positive qualities of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind. Positive virtues and perfect accomplishments. The Tibetan word is gelek, and gelek is like a portmanteau of two words, so geva and lekpa. So geva is positive virtue, and perfect accomplishment is lekpa. So together they mean gelek. And in this context, you know the Tibetan greeting Tashi Delek. So we have Delek, Deva and Legpa. And Deva and Geva have the same Sanskrit root. So Delek or Gelek, they're the same. And with this, perhaps one way of differentiating between positive virtues and perfect accomplishments is in the context of maybe that those two can correspond to Sonam and Yeshe, to merit, Sonam Gitso, to to merits and exalted wisdom. Merits and exalted wisdom. I think that could be a way of interpreting both the usage of these two words, Gyawa and Lagpa. So the Buddha, when he spoke, when he gave his teachings, then not only did he give a type of a teaching, not only did he give, I could say, the highest teaching, but he gave teachings that could touch the hearts of all types of minds, of all types of capacities. So therefore he gave Hinayana teachings as well as Mahayana teachings, and within that Paranjaparamidayana teachings and also Tantrayana teachings. So this way he could perhaps see to everyone's needs, and so that the disciples, according to their way of approaching the teachings or whatever is most beneficial for them, he could then benefit them in that way. And then, speaking about the enlightened mind, then it is said that the Buddha can understand, the Buddha can perceive his disciples' nature or his disciples' mental disposition, his disciples' imprints. So imprints refers to imprints from past life. Mental disposition is maybe their level of intelligence and of course their nature. And nature in this context could mean whether they are of perhaps a Hinayana, more of the nature of, whether they are more of a person of small capacity or middle or higher capacity. Or it can also mean to the dhatu, kam. Kam means dhatu. The Sanskrit word for kam is dhatu. So this refers to their nature in the context of Buddha nature, or whether they have a more of a arhat nature or a Buddha nature, something like that. Then there's one Tibetan word, meba. Meba the injigel can just do wish, yes, wish. And wish, I think, can also refer to whether they wish for the highest achievement or the middle or the lower achievements, or whether it is only for nganto tangele. So nganto is higher rebirth, or they are aspiring for liberation. Nganto tangele. So Buddha knows this, When I'm here in this room, I don't know that, I don't know that. But the Buddha, when he looks in his disciples, he sees all of this. And this is how he's able to give teachings that benefits everyone. And also going back to the Buddha's speech, as you're familiar with the Pranjaparamita Sutra, Gending Dusum. So the extensive one is the 100,000 line, and then the medium length is the 25,000 or 20,000 lines, and then the concise Paranjaparamita, or the concise Mother Sutra, is the 8,000 line. And it is said that Buddha didn't give these three Paranjaparamita Sutras in a chronological order, but he gave these teachings all simultaneously and according to the mental disposition of the students. Then those who had the highest capacity, the highest mental capacity, then received the teachings. Then they received the 8,000 lines, and then those on the medium capacity received the 25,000 lines, and then those of relatively lower mental capacity, because even to understand the 100,000 lines, I think you would have to have quite high intelligence, and of course have very high, very strong imprints. You have to be quite special. In other words, you have to be quite special to understand those teachings. So those who had relatively lower intelligence then received the teachings of the 100,000 lines. So these are the qualities of Buddha's body, speech, and mind. And with his body quality, his physical quality, it is said that, those of you who are familiar with the sutra, Kunjo Jedengito. So perhaps, I don't know if this is the right translation. Kunjo Jedengito in this Juwar. Kunjo Jedengito. Maybe Kunjo is Ratna, so remembering the Ratna Sutra that His Holiness emphasizes that we recite this sutra on a daily basis, and especially during his teachings, we always begin with that sutra. So in that sutra, then it states that it describes Buddha's qualities, and that one of his physical qualities is that anyone who sees his physical appearance will not have negative thoughts, from seeing that. So these are some of his qualities. Even though when we say Buddha, we are not referring to a historical figure, but here, since it says head of the Shakya clan, then obviously we are referring to the historical Buddha Shakyamuni. And then now with the second verse, so maybe I can read this. I prostrate before you, Maitreya and Manjushri, supreme spiritual children of this peerless teacher, assuming responsibility to further all Buddha's enlightened deeds. You sport emanations to countless worlds. Maitreya and Manjushri are considered very, very important, and especially in Tantra. Maitreya and Manjushri even by their name or attribute, then I think it is not too difficult to see that because if you look at the two lineage, the vast lineage and Rinpoche, ya, ten sedala, ten mixation, Rinpoche ya pena, Rinpoche ya pena. Ten zuwanj, ten bedenshan. Now this. Rinpoche de berana, Rinpoche de shirana. Stachtle, Rinpoche ko geseda. Las. Maitreya and Manjushri, they are through which the vast lineage and the profound lineage come through. So I think just as Manjushri is considered maybe the personification of the Buddha's exalted wisdom, then I think Maitreya can also be considered a personification of the Buddha's compassion. If I have to be more technical, more accurate, then I think Maitreya can be considered the emanation of Buddha's love, and then Avalokiteshvara is the personification of Buddha's compassion. Even though in the Sutra, then Maitreya and Manjushri are considered bodhisattvas, but in the Tantra, then they would be enlightened beings and just a different aspect of the Buddha. And it is said that Manjushri guides all Buddhas in all potential Buddhas, I think I should say this, that Manjushri guides all potential Buddhas in realizing insight, in realizing insight of the true nature of reality. So Buddha Shakyamuni himself, as he was also, when he was on the path to enlightenment, he was also guided by Manjushri. So it is sometimes, I think, quite difficult to think of Manjushri as just one person, but rather Manjushri is not just Manjushri should not be understood as just as a historical figure, but just like Buddha, just like Buddha. I don't think it refers to a single person, but it is a quality. It really refers to a quality, and Manjushri is the personification of that quality, right? And if we see a historical figure, then that could be understood perhaps as an emanation of Manjushri. Yes. This is something that I think is a recurring theme in Tantra. When you have many deities, it is sometimes easy to see this deity as a single entity, just like me or just like yourself or like that. But many times these symbolize, I think, some enlightened deed or some enlightened mind or some enlightened aspect. And now with verse 3, I prostrate before your feet, Nagarjuna and Asanga, ornaments of our southern continent. Highly famed throughout the 3 realms, you have commented on the most difficult to fathom, Mother of the Buddhas, perfection of wisdom sutras, according to exactly what was intended. Now, this is paying homage to Nagarjuna and Asanga. I think the word here, forerunners, is used. Sometimes I think trailblazer is also used, right? Trailblazer. So the 2 forerunners, the 2 trailblazers, Acharya Nagarjuna and Asanga. Nagarjuna is the forerunner of Madhyamaka, and Asanga of Yogacara or Chittamatra. Madhyamaka and Chittamatra, it has to do with philosophy, Buddhist philosophy. And then it is quite interesting that when you have Maitreya and Manjushri, and then after that, Nagarjuna and Asanga, right? So Nagarjuna then from the Buddha, then he gave the teachings of the profound to Manjushri, and through that, and then Manjushri gave those teachings to Nagarjuna. Then Maitreya gave the vast teachings to Asanga. Even though Nagarjuna and Asanga are considered forerunners with regarding Madhyamaka philosophy and Chittamatran philosophy, still both of them are very important in these 2 lineages, right? In these 2 lineages. So maybe there is a connection between Madhyamaka and the profound lineage, and there's a connection between the Chittamatran, right? Chittamatran philosophy and the vast lineage. So if we are able to make this connection, then I think those of us who hold the Madhyamaka view can then be, I think, more appreciative of the Chittamatran view, and and those of us who hold the Chittamatran view then can appreciate the Madhyamaka view. So it is quite easy to, it is easier to make the connection between the Madhyamaka philosophy and the profound lineage. But then what is the connection between the Chittamatran view and the vast lineage? I think this is something that we have to think about. Anyhow, Manjushri, there are no, not that I know of, any historical evidence that Manjushri has written or has composed any texts. But of course, in many of the sutras, as well as the tantras, then there are many instances when Manjushri is perhaps either questioning or answering, So those passages can of course be attributed to Manjushri, and one could say that those are Manjushri's words, and therefore, in a way, he has sort of composed those, even though formally, I don't think he has anything that is attributed to him. But the thing is that even in those sutras, where these bodhisattvas are having, they're discussing, even though it is their words, but somehow those teachings are not attributed, right, to those bodhisattvas, but rather to the Buddha himself. So they don't hold the copyright, even though they are doing, all the discussions. The teaching itself is attributed to the Buddha, and the reason for that is that we say, when we categorize the Buddha's teachings, one way of categorizing that is that not only Buddha gave teachings by his words, but he also gave teachings that were influenced or that were blessed by him. So many of these discussions with two bodhisattvas, like for an example, in the Heart Sutra, the discussion between Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara, So those discussions would be, again, they would be considered sutra. Of course, not spoken by the Buddha, but blessed by the Buddha, right? But that is not the case with Maitreya. So the Maitreya has 5 treatises attributed to him, and one of these is considered very important. The Abhisamaya Alamkara, which deals with the 70 topics, and this is really considered very important because the Pranjaparamita, the Pranjaparamita sutras, even though they deal directly with primarily the profound aspect of the path, yet the teachings on the vast aspect of the path is hidden, right? Is hidden within the Pranjaparamita Sutras, and Maitreya's Abhisamaya Alamkara then clarifies that. So it's considered very important. I think all of all Tibetan traditions, when they study Pranjaparamita, then this is considered a very important text of reference. And then one another very important work, part of the five, is of course Uttara Tantra. But I think in some other traditions, then it is controversial. It is attributed to a different author. I think something like Saramati, something like that. But in the Tibetan tradition, then we then we believe that we would count that, we would consider that as one of his works. Now, Nagarjuna and Asanga, even though they are both forerunners in their respective ways, but somehow there is a stronger emphasis, or Nagarjuna plays a more important role. And the reason for that is not only did Nagarjuna played the role in Madhyamika, but he, if you look, Asanga was very important in revitalizing the Chitta Matharan tradition. Nagarjuna was very important in revitalizing the Madhyamaka tradition. So they are both similar in that respect, but the uniqueness of Nagarjuna is that he also played a very important role in Tantrayana as well, whereas with Asanga, that is not the case. So Asanga's work primarily deals with Sutrayana, with Sutrayana. So Nagarjuna was important not just in the field of Sutrayana, in the field of of revitalizing the Buddha's sutra teachings, but also his tantric teachings as well. So therefore there is this stronger emphasis. Therefore he's considered to have played an important role. And then here it says, highly famed throughout the three realms. So I thought this could be a little confusing, because when you say the three realms, then it usually means desire realm, form realm, and formless realm, right? But here in the Tibetan translation, JMG uses a different word, and this is sasum, right? Which would mean the three grounds, right? The three grounds, not the three realms, but the three grounds. So the three grounds refers to Sao, Sadeng, Salas. So below the ground, on the ground, and above the ground. So below the ground refers primarily to the Nagas, and on the ground refers to, of course, human beings, and above the ground refers to the gods and the demigods. So, with this word, Mother of the Buddha's Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, according to exactly what was intended, according to exactly what was intended. The intention of those, what was intended, I don't know how intention maybe is not the right word, because intention sounds more like motivation, right? Intention, it sounds more like motivation. But here, when we say what was intended, that's more like the meaning, right? It means, I think, more like the meaning of the teaching. Excuse me?
It does have both meanings, both the motivation and the intended meaning.
Yes, thank you. And now with verse number 4, I bow to Dibamgara Adisha, holder of a treasure of instructions, as seen in your lamp for the path to enlightenment, all the complete, unmistaken points concerning the paths of profound view and vast action, transmitted intact from these two great forerunners, can be included within in. Debamgara Adisha played a very important role in revitalizing Buddhism in Tibet. After one of the Tibetan kings, as he was not in favor of Buddhism in Tibet, and then many of the temples were destroyed, many libraries, many scriptures were burned. So it was a difficult moment in history. But fortunately, there were a few. There were those few who kept the tradition, and they fled more to the eastern to eastern Tibet, and they kept the tradition, and then slowly, then they returned, and then the king of Ngari then requested to invite Adisha to Tibet. Adisha was a prince, and he studied not from a young age. He studied not only Buddhist texts, but also he was very well versed in the non-Buddhist texts as well. And he had many teachers, but one teacher that he really considered very important was Lama Selingpa. The reason for that is that is from whom he had received instructions on bodhicitta, Lama Selingpa. Even though Lama Selingpa, view-wise, or his philosophy was that school-wise, he followed the Chitta Madrin school of thought, but and Adisha was, a Madhyamagin, but still he considered him the most important of his gurus because of bodhicitta, because of bodhicitta. So again, this shows that just because someone has a different view of how things exist or how things are, that doesn't mean that that is a good reason that one should perhaps sort of cut connections or not have or have feelings of adversity towards them, because you might, even though you might not have the same views when it comes to certain things, but if you share the important things, if you share the important things, of course bodhicitta is very important, then you have common ground, and if that practice of bodhicitta really benefits you, then even though the person you may have received it from may not have the same philosophy, still there is no contradiction there. There is no contradiction. So even I think we can learn from this aspect, from this, from Adisha, not just from his teachings, but also from his life, from his life story. I think we can also try to apply this to ourselves. So Adisha was requested by Lama, I think Yixue, to compose, a very simple text for us Tibetans, because I think the Tibetans in the early days were, of course, we didn't have this system of learning the Dharma yet. This was the early days, so they requested that the master keeps it simple, master keeps it simple and to the point, and therefore he composed the path, the lamp illuminating the path to enlightenment. And I don't remember the story very clearly, but I think this text was sent back to India, and then the Indian masters were just absolutely thrilled with that. They said, "This is so good," and I think he was then given permission to stay in Tibet for the rest of the time because they were so happy. Yeah. And then there are these other stories of how Tara came to appeared to Adisha, and then then Tara gave instructions and said that if he goes to Tibet, it would benefit many sentient beings. So there are many stories. In total, I think he stayed 17 years in Tibet. 17 years in Tibet, yeah. But now, when we visit Tibet, I think in those days it was quite different. The map of Tibet is not like how it is now. Nowadays we talk of the 3 provinces, but that changed. That was like 1,000 years back, and Tibet wasn't exactly what we are referring to. I think it was a whole lot smaller. It was a whole lot smaller. And throughout history, I think the boundaries, changed from time to time. So this was mainly, I think, in the Yu and Tsang area, but starting from Ngari, and then spreading more towards central Tibet, So Ngari would be nearer the Indian border, and then gradually then the Kadamba teachings then spread towards central Tibet. Even though nowadays we don't have the Kadam tradition doesn't exist like the other, like the four traditions of Tibetan Buddhism presently, but it has sort of, it is still it is still held in high regard, and it has been, I think, integrated into three schools, yeah. Because the Nyingma tradition was the first one. It already began before the Kadam. So Kadam had also influenced the Kagyu and the Sakya, and then the Gelug tradition. Yeah, so it has sort of what do you call that? The streams, and then it flows in those traditions. Got sort of mixed, right? Got mixed. And then the fifth verse is paying homage to not to any particular spiritual masters, but to spiritual masters in general. Respectfully, I prostrate before my spiritual masters. You are the eyes allowing us to behold all the infinite scriptural pronouncements, the best ford for those of good fortune to cross to liberation. You make everything clear through your skillful deeds, which are moved by intense, loving concern. Here, yeah, so here I think Rinpoche, even though he's paying homage to spiritual masters in general, I think he pays homage by highlighting, I think, some important qualities of the spiritual master. So, you are the eyes allowing us to behold all the infinite scriptural pronouncements. This highlights the profound quality of the spiritual master, and then you make everything clear through your skillful deeds, which are moved by intense loving concern. That highlights the vast or the methodical aspect, the method aspect of the path that is a quality of the spiritual master. So these are two essential qualities, the method aspect and the wisdom aspect. the best fort for those of good fortune. Good fortune many times refers to bodhisattvas, but in this case, it refers to those who yearn for liberation. Those who yearn for liberation. Okay, so those are the 5 verses, and then today morning I think we have verse number 6 and 7, and perhaps I could continue. The stages of the path to enlightenment have been transmitted intact by those who have followed in order, both from Nagarjuna and Asanga. Those crowning jewels of all erudite masters of our southern continent, and the banner of whose fame stands out above the masses. As following these stages can fulfill every desirable aim of all 9 kinds of being, they are a power-granting king of precious instruction. Because they collect the streams of thousands of excellent classics, they are indeed an ocean of illustrious, correct explanation. The southern continent refers to, when we do the mandala, so in the middle we have Mount Meru, then to its east, and then us on the south. Jambudvipa, I think, in Sanskrit, Jambudvipa. Jambu is a tree, and it's said that its fruits will fall on the water and it would make this big sound, right? So Zambuling means the land of Zambu, the land of Jambu, this tree. But anyhow, I think we can say that it is quite difficult to really explain what this southern continent is. Many times we would think it means our planet. Yeah, it is quite difficult. Because if one would then have to study the classical cosmology, classical cosmology, and classical cosmology is quite different from modern day cosmology. So there's nothing to elaborate on that. Oh, here it says 9 kinds of being. The 9 kinds of being refers to, as previously I was talking about the 3 realms, right? The 3 realms. So desire, form, and formless realm. So the 9 kinds of being refers to. So let's say for desire realm, there are beings who are born. Who are reborn in desire realm, from desire realm, or from form realm, or from formless realm. So those are 3 beings, and then you just do that for those being reborn in the form realm, and then again to those being reborn in the formless realm. So times 3, yeah. So those are the 9 kinds of being. But in Tibetan, we say ke gu, ke gu, ke gu. So ke is maybe lives, and gu is the number 9, but sometimes it's also spelled in another, it's spelled differently, so that doesn't necessarily refer to the number, but if you write the number 9, then geku means this, right? Geku. So 9 lives, something like that. And then there's a saying, a cat has 9 lives, right? So I think that's true. But here, I think verse 6 and 7, it's not, it doesn't correspond to the original text. In, I think, Thubten Jimba's, Geshe Thubten Jimba's translation, then perhaps I will read number 6 and number 7 so that it would then correspond to the original text. So verse 6 is, you are the crowning jewels among the learned ones of this world. Your banners of fame flutter vibrantly amongst the sentient beings. O Nagarjuna and Asanga, from you flow in an excellent, steady stream this instruction on the stages of the path to enlightenment. This is verse number 6. And since it fulfills all the wishes of beings without exception, it is the King of Kings among all quintessential instructions, since it gathers onto it thousands of excellent rivers of treatises. It is as well the ocean of most glorious, well-uttered insights. So it seems that here in our text, verse number 6 seems to contain both verse number 6 and 7. But this, I checked, and this is not any mistake with the printing here, but it is also, it was also written like this in the original translated text. But in Geshe Thubten Jimba's translation, he does not mention anything about the 9 kinds of being. That is because I think in Tibetan or in Rinpoche's original text, then remember I was making that reference to the word keku, and in that text the number 9 was not used, so that would just mean sentient beings. But this is, I think, a good clarification here. In this text, when they follow with the number 9, then it is something that we understand, right? It is, yeah, it makes sense, yes, the 9 lives. So that's verse number 6 and 7. So the first verses are the verses on homage. And then these 2 verses, I think, it is now, Rinpoche is now sort of setting up the stage, for why he's going to compose these notes on Lam Rim. So, two important attributes of the Lam Rim teaching is clearly mentioned in verse number 7. I'm sorry, but not here. But it would be then the second half of verse number 6, according to this translation. Okay, as following these stages can fulfill every desirable aim of all 9 kinds of being. So this is one aspect. Because they collect the streams of thousands of excellent classics, that is like the second quality of the Lam Rim teachings. Again, fulfilling the wishes of beings without exception. I think that is really highlighting a very unique feature of the Lam Rim teaching, which is categorizing the hearer, the listener of the Dharma, into those 3 categories of the 3 types of person. So not only catering to the person who is primarily seeking just liberation, or those who are seeking liberation for the sake of all others, but also to those who are not seeking liberation but only higher rebirth. So then this goes beyond just Hinayana or Mahayana Sutra. It goes beyond that. And within the person of small capacity, then I think you have 기부충어 캐버지. We say, what's the word? 기부충어 캐버지. Anyhow, can you remind me of there are these 2 categories of the person of small capacity. There are 2 types of person of small capacity. I cannot remember.
Are you talking about the pot? you referring to the pot, that flows through? Is that what you're referring to?
The person
Or
of...
the teachings like flows through the pot, or the analogy to the
Oh,
pot?
not that, no. The person of small capacity, I'm trying to think of the definition. 기부 충분 캐버리진 세조로?
One who is interested in higher rebirth, and one who's interested in liberation.
Liberation, but liberation would be the middle capacity.
Would this be a better life in this life or a better life in the next life?
Yes, that one. Thank you. Yes. So within that, one who is only aspiring to have a good life, and then one who wants to continue having the same good life onto the next life. So then the teachings of Lama is also relevant, to total of now I think 4 different types we could say, right? Those who are interested in having a good life, those who are interested in having to sort of continue that also, right? Not just this life, but also to have the same level onto the next life. And then those who just want to get out of all this endless, this endless cycle, right? So that is the person of middle capacity. And then those who not only want to end this endless cycle, but who would not only for themselves, but also for others as well. So we have in total 4 different types. Yeah. So this is what it means I think this is what it means when it says that it fulfills every desirable aim of sentient beings. And I think all sentient beings can be, what is the word? They would all have to fit in one of these 4 categories, What? Can you help me with a better? So yes. So all sentient beings can be included in one of these 4 types of persons. Included is a good word, and then I was thinking of something else. Yes, encompassed. That's another good word. Dua. Duna said dua. Duba. When we learn this philosophy, like logic, we say all phenomena, they're either permanent or impermanent, right? They're either permanent phenomena or impermanent phenomena. How would you say that they can be? So you have many things, but they can either be this or that. Condensed. What?
That covers all possibilities.
They're subsumed.
Subsumed. Engrossed. Oh. Thank you. All those are very helpful. Thank you. Yes. But I will stick with the easiest one. They can all be included. Yes. Duba. Okay. Yes. And then the second attribute, they collect this Lamrim teaching collects the streams of thousands of excellent classics. Yeah. So this means that they contain all the essential points of the Buddha's scriptures. of Buddha's teachings. So even I think for to if one wants to practice, let us say, the Four Noble Truths, then the teachings of Four Noble Truths is also contained in the Lamrim teachings, right? And if you want to study, if you want to practice, let us say, the teachings of Prajnaparamita, or you want to practice the Heart Sutra, then that teaching is also contained in the Lamrim teaching. If you want to practice perhaps Tantra, then also those teachings are contained in the Lamrim teachings. I think Jeremji just at the very end, I think Jeremji just sort of touches on tantric teachings, right? But maybe for Tantra, then it really lays out the foundation of tantric practices. Without practicing on the meditative points, the practice points of the Lamrim teachings, I don't think you can practice Tantra. Now we have to be careful. We have to be careful, I think, when we say the Lamrim teachings, when we say, oh, if you want to practice Tantra, then you must study Lamrim. We should not make the mistake of saying that, because Lamrim, when it is translated into English, it means the stages of the path to enlightenment, right? But many times Lamrim can just refer to a genre, or it could just refer to Rinpoche's text, Lamrim. So we have to be careful there, by not giving any, not creating any misunderstandings. So rather than referring to just one text, if you, without knowing the meaning that is contained here in Rinpoche's Lamrim, if you don't know the meaning of that, which is the same contents that is in the Adisha's lamp illuminating the path of enlightenment, then one is not able to have the right foundations of practicing the Tantrayana. So, yeah, this is therefore then I think this is what it means by saying that this collects the streams of thousands of excellent classics, referring to Buddha's own works, Buddha's teachings. And then, because of that, there indeed an ocean of illustrious, correct explanation. It's very poetic, It's very poetic. Oh, Jeremji was also an excellent poet as well. So, not only a great practitioner and a very learned person, but he also knew how to write poems. Tibetan grammar and Tibetan poems. You have to gain a certain artistry for that. So for sure he was a natural. If I try to write Tibetan poetry, then I think it will come out very bad, Yeah. Okay, so maybe at this point, maybe those of you can also join in, and some of you can join in, and perhaps we can have a short question-answer session. Yes. Korang la.
Rinpoche, I wonder if you could maybe give us your...
Could you turn on the...
The microphone's on, it just needs to be turned up a little.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you could give us some of your thoughts on the connection between Chittamatra view and the vast or the compassion or method part of the two wings that you need for enlightenment.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. If you go back to Maitreya, from those 5 treatises, 2 of them explain from the viewpoint, explain the teachings of the Buddha from the viewpoint of Madhyamaka, and 3 explain from the viewpoint of Chittamatra. Asanga, after receiving these 5 treatises from Maitreya, and then after coming back to the southern continent, then he composed 5 texts, and these 5 texts do not correspond to the 5 texts of Maitreya, but they are all explained from the viewpoint of Chittamatra. And then his hard disciple, Vasubandhu, composed 8 treatises, and then Asanga also composed 2 other treatises that is not part of the 5 sadhyanga, maybe like the 5 grounds. I don't know the English translation, but anyhow, Asanga has 6 in total 6 treatises. Sadhyanga Domnani, 7, and then Vasubandhu has 8, Maitreya with 5, and in all there are 20, and we have a term for those 20, right? Your question was, what is the link between the Chittamatra view and the vast lineage? So, if you go by the author, then there is a very strong connection, right? There is a very strong connection, because Maitreya from the Buddha, then Maitreya received the vast lineage, and then he passed that on to Asanga. So from the author side, there is this connection, but directly from the teachings itself, is there a connection? I think that's your question. Then I think that is more difficult to connect, But maybe with the Chitta-Matran philosophy, it may be because, in the Chitta-Matran philosophy, according to that viewpoint, everything exists. Everything has an inherent existence, right? Everything has this inherent quality. They believe in this. Of course, not the Matamikans. So I just thought this up. I might be wrong, because in the Chitta-Matran philosophy, you have this strong viewpoint, right? Therefore, according to that view, when you look at phenomena, everything has this basis. There is a very strong basis. There is a very strong basis of existence. They don't talk of it's just a label, as the Madhyamikans would. So they really emphasize this very strong existence. And I thought that when you emphasize it like this, with this view, then I think it is good. I think that can sort of aid in developing compassion to sentient beings, because when you think that there is a sentient being out there that is suffering, and that there really is this suffering, from the object itself. If you really have this strong view, I think that for the time being, it helps in developing compassion. So maybe the Chitta-Matran view then is, if you deal with it in a skillful way, then it's good in developing compassion for sentient beings. Whereas the danger with, or the pitfalls with the Madhyamikan view, if you are not careful, is that if you apply the Madhyamikan's view onto other sentient beings, then that might inhibit, developing compassion. You might think, oh, it's just an illusion. So what if they suffer? It's just an illusion, right? So that might inhibit the cultivation of compassion. So perhaps with the cultivation of compassion, then for maybe beginners, then the Chitta-Matran's view, using that to cultivate compassion, I think it might aid in the generation of compassion. And maybe, that is the connection with the Chitta-Matra and the vast lineage, which is primarily, which deals with the cultivation of compassion and of course bodhicitta. Okay, thank you. Yeah, wow.
The president. Okay. Rinpoche, I had 2 questions before you answered John's question, but now I have 3. But you can cut me off at any time. One thing I'm curious about is, where do we trace the beginning of the Mahayana lineage? Was there a Mahayana before Nagarjuna? Shall I ask my 3 questions? Okay. Then I always thought that we were taught, I mean, this is my idea, I could be mistaken, that if you were interested in only this life's benefit, having a good life now, that was actually not a Buddhist motivation. And then I'm surprised to hear that the mind-only school has such a strong view of the existence of things, because I thought their view was that things are just projections of our mind. So please help me out with these 3 questions.
Thank you. The Madhyamika lineage, of course, I think it has to. If we try to trace Madhyamika lineage, I think we won't be able to trace it. We won't be able to find the beginning of the Madhyamika lineage. Oh, excuse me? Mahayana lineage. Oh, so your question was how do we
Where do we fix the beginning
of the Mahayana lineage? Oh, I think to the Buddha.
But you could say the same about the Madhyamaka lineage, right?
Yes, I could. Then maybe we can speak like this, that when we, of course, taking into account of, the Buddha's teachings, his ideas of beginningless, we have that on one hand, but then on the other hand, conventionally speaking, when we try to trace the teachings of the Buddha or some lineage, it's important that we always go back to the Buddha. Yeah, this is very important. But then again, you can ask this question, and then Buddha was also once a sentient being, just like us, and again, he had his teachers before that. So if you think like that, then there is no starting point for either the Mahayana lineage or the Madhyamika lineage in that way. But in this teaching, or in this Buddha cycle, or in this eon, right, of the 1,000 Buddhas or 1,004 Buddhas, then we would have to always go back to the historical Buddha. Yes, that is usually a good starting point, because if we try to go beyond that, then we don't have any historical facts, right? So for the time being, that's usually that's where Dharma starts, right? That's where Dharma starts with the Buddha, and so all aspects, be it Mahayana or Hinayana or Madhyamika, the other schools of Buddhist thought, they all begin from the Buddha. Yeah. So that's the first one, and the second one was this having this worldly thought of just enjoying this life. Is that a Buddhist motivation, right? That's a very good question, and the Sakya masters, they give these teachings on the 4 partings, Shenpa Shitel, the 4 partings from just being attached to this life's luxuries or the pleasures of this life. So that is the first one, that we should part away from the attachment of this life's pleasures. And then there's a very nice statement which states that if you are thinking of this life's pleasures, then you are not practicing the Dharma. No. So this is so true, that if you are not thinking of the next life, if you are just fully absorbed into this life's pleasures, then you're not a true Dharma practitioner. You're not. Yes. So the teachings on the four partings, I think, is very useful, just to remind us that, because I'm not aware that in the Gelug tradition we have some reminders, that the Sakya masters would use. Maybe because the Sakya masters already had used that example so eloquently that Rinpoche or any of his disciples didn't feel the need to have something similar, So this is something I think we can learn, that we can learn from the Sakya tradition. Yeah. So the four partings. So parting away from this, from parting away from the attachment of this life, parting away from the attachment of the next lives, parting away from the attachment of self-concern, parting away from the attachment of parting away from the attachment of view. I will just use that word for the time being. So these four partings is considered very important. So if one is not able to part away from the desire of this life, then one is not able to practice the Dharma. If one is not able to if one is not able to part away from the desire of next life's pleasures, then one is not able to pursue liberation. If one is not able to part away from the desires of self-concern, then one is not able to engage in the deeds of the Bodhisattva. If one is not able to part away from the attachment of view, then one is not able to gain insight, right? So this is very important, and if one is not able to part away from the desires of view, then one is not able to gain correct insight. Yeah. So the teachings of the four partings, I think, even though it's just like a verse, but this contains I think, basically all the Lamrim points, in a nutshell. This is so important. And I've used these examples like in Germany, and this, I think, it really captures, the teachings of the Buddha in a just using so few words, but it really captures all the essential points. Yeah. So the four partings. So the four parting aways. I don't know the exact translation. Yeah. So that's and then the third one was
About the mind-only school.
Oh yes. You're right. In the mind-only school, there is this distinction, even though so the mind-only tradition asserts that everything is a mere appearance of mind, still they would accept that things, all objects would have an existence from their own side. So this is one difference that we have to make clear. According to the Chitta modern viewpoint, all phenomena exist from their own side, yet they are a mere appearance of the mind. I know it seems contradicting, because from the Matemagan's viewpoint, then we say, those who talk, those who believe in an essential nature, and those who don't, right? So Matemegans are the ones that do not believe in an essential nature, in the sense that an object would have its own, would have an existence, would have a quality that exists from its own basis. So this is the essential nature that I'm referring to. Of course, not reality or ultimate truth. So those are something that we need to clarify. But I think as we move on, I think in the coming days, then we will have more time to talk about these things. Thank you. Oh, please.
Thank you, Rinpoche, and it's lovely to be at your feet again.
At my feet?
Yeah.
No. It is lovely to be here again as friends. Yes.
Thank you. I'm kind of building on Jean's question, and to clarify my own understanding with the starting point of the Mahayana, and perhaps it's just to clarify, I had heard the Hinayana tradition, the Theravada start was more that life is suffering, and so you want to exit samsara, and so you just focus on nirvana to leave this life, and that the Prajnaparamita texts were like a hidden teaching that was found again around the 1st century, and that because things were empty of any inherent permanent self-existence, it gave the possibility of and the potential to really engage in life, which is what also brought the bodhisattva ideal to really develop fearlessness, to enter into samsara, to gain enlightenment. So I was just wanting to clarify, because that's kind of what I had been holding in my mind about the start of the Mahayana, more from the Prajnaparamita texts.
Yes. Thank you so much. That's a very good point. In the Kanjur, the translated text of the Buddha, the category, the order is first the Vinaya texts, and then the Pranjaparamita texts, and then the maybe Abhidharma texts, right? The Abhidharma. And that, I think, has to do with the Buddha's teachings, specifically Buddha's turning wheel of the Dharma, Buddha's turning of the wheel of Dharma. So that corresponds to the three times to the three turning the wheel of the Dharma. So the first one was, of course, the one on Four Noble Truths, and then, so therefore, then the Vinaya texts are mainly considered part of that group, and then with the second turning the wheel of the Dharma, which is primarily the Paranjaparamita Sutras, then with that, then so in that order, that is how it is categorized in the translated works of the Buddha, Kangyur. Sometimes I think, historians, they have these differing views of the origin of the Paranjaparamita Sutra, and then particularly Tantrayana. I think that is considered even, that they say that came even later, right? I think like 4th century, 5th century, something like that. So maybe at the time Nagarjuna came, something like that. But we always say that these teachings originate from the Buddha. This is one point. And then if you go with history, then I think what we really have in India, it's mainly from the Pali tradition, because Buddha gave most of his teachings in Pali, I believe. And there was, I remember seeing this school book that the Indian government uses for all its schools, for the central schools. And there was this this chapter on Buddhism, and I remember looking through it, and in one of the did you know facts, it mentioned because the Buddha gave teachings in Pali, and since Pali was the prevalent language, prevalent, okay, prevalent, since it was the prevalent language spoken by most people, therefore the Buddha's teachings spread throughout India, and many of the Hindu masters would teach in Sanskrit, so that was only, Sanskrit was the language of the learned ones, right? The learned ones. So that was interesting, and but I believe all the Paranjaparamita Sutras are in Sanskrit, not in Pali, right? So that is one thing to keep in mind. And then I think it would be safe to say that we really don't have any historical proofs that the teachings of the Paranjaparamita Sutra originated from the Buddha, because we believe that it was that the Buddha gave the Paranjaparamita Sutra teachings on, of course, the Vulture's Peak, the year after he attained enlightenment. And at the same time, simultaneously, he also gave the teachings on Kalachakra in Amravati, So that was simultaneous. Vulture's Peak and down south, Amravati, the Pranjaparamita Sutra teachings and the Kala Chakra Tantra, both at the same time. So with this, this is the part of our narrative, and it is obvious that here now we are bringing in elements of perhaps mysticism, right? Right? So this is not something that you will find in the historical records. It was not something that ordinary people at that time were aware about. It was not something that people were aware, and I don't think the Buddha gave teachings on Pranjaparamita in public. I don't believe that he gave teachings. I don't believe that he gave his Pranjaparamita teachings in the public. In the public, he gave very simple teachings, mostly on moral conduct, on how to lead an ethical life. He gave, in other words, he gave practical advice, to people. He didn't go around talking about emptiness, He didn't. And then giving advice on how to lead a virtuous life, on how to, teaching people mostly about cause and effect, karma. These teachings are very important. They are the backbone of the Pranjaparamita teachings. Nowadays, His Holiness, as you all know, with his teachings, or should I say his talks on secular ethics or universal responsibility, that was sort of what the Buddha was doing in those days, giving secular ethics. And it was secular ethics when the Buddha talked about Buddhist ethics, because we didn't believe in a creator God, right? There was no creator God, and he was giving these teachings to the public, and I think just as His Holiness in the public nowadays emphasizes these universal values, universal ethics, ever more so, but in more secluded gatherings, then His Holiness would give higher teachings, and to even a more selected few, then he would give the highest Yoga Tantra teachings like that. So I think it was also similar in that way, except in those days we didn't have record keeping, right? We didn't have video or audio, so therefore we don't have these proofs. So I think that is, I think this is something that we should understand. In the 8,000 or in the other Panchavaramita Sutra lines, then it mentions that thousands and thousands of followers coming to the teachings. But now if you go to the Vulture's Peak, then you might doubt about whether you can fit that many people there, right? You might doubt, right? But this is not contradictory, because when you gain a higher state of mind, then there are many things that are possible, and that is beyond our conventional explanation way of things, that is just beyond that. And so and then the Pranchaparamita sutras are in Sanskrit, and there was probably a good reason that they were in Sanskrit, because if you explain emptiness to the average Joe, I don't think average Joe would appreciate emptiness. I don't think so. So that's why it was presented in that language, where someone who knew the language, that there is a higher chance, that there is a higher percentage that the person would appreciate the teachings. So I think, yeah, we have to be mindful of those points. Yeah, very important. Thank you. So now I think we have now reached our time limit. So thank you very much. Thank you for the questions, and please enjoy lunch. Yes.